Hey guys, in in this video I am going to do a tutorial and I'm gonna go more into depth of what I do when I'm drawing. But here first I'm just doing my line work, and with my line work I take the picture and I just, go over the areas. Line work is kind of self-explanatory, but once it gets here, like into other parts when I'm not doing line work, I'll go more, into depth. But I guess one thing I could say with my line work, I pick kind of a bigger canvas because, like, if you have a smaller canvas, you need to use like super thin lines on your line work, but if you have like bigger lines, it'll make them look less pixelated. So if you have a bigger canvas and you zoom out the picture, like when you, let's say if you had a small canvas, you were using like 1 point thickness, but it looks the same on a bigger canvas if you're using like 4 point thickness. But with the bigger canvas, the line that you use with the 4 point thickness isn't gonna look nearly as pixelated. It's gonna look more smooth. Oh, and another thing that you're gonna want to do, if you don't already do this already, when you put down a picture for your line work, you want to make sure you put the layer up, or you want to make another layer to put it above that picture. So once you've made that other layer and you put it above the picture, the line work that you have doesn't stick to the picture. Because honestly, sometimes I'd be forgetting to do that, and my line work sticks to the picture and I have to start over again. But I'm pretty sure everybody knows to do that. You don't want the line work set to the picture because that just doesn't make sense. But everybody usually says this, so I thought I would say it too. Okay, what I do once I have finished the line work, I go to the selection layer, and wait, before I go to the selection layer, I make sure to turn off the visibility in the picture layer, and then I go to the selection layer and I get the bucket tool and I bucket everything outside of my outline, and then it'll have everything selected that's not inside of your line work. And then what I do is I go to the picture and I erase everything that's outside of the line work in the picture, so when I want to put the picture back on, it's not like all the background is kind of in the way. Okay, after I've completed this step, I use my line work there and I take it and I duplicate it. Once I duplicate it, I select the layer underneath the top duplicate, so the bottom duplicate layer that I made of my line work, and then I pick out the colors for my skin. Also, when picking out the colors for one of these pictures, if the picture is not very saturated in color, what I do is I drop the color of the skin where I think it's medium tone, and I kind of find the color of the undertone. You know, when I did this one, it had a red undertone, so instead of just using the color that I eyedropped, I kind of moved it over to the more red undertone, so the skin looks more colorful and less, you know, because the picture doesn't really have much color in the skin like an actual person would, because the camera doesn't really pick it up, I guess. You don't have to do this, I just thought this is just what I do because it makes things easier for me. You don't have to do this, you could turn on the visibility over and over again and get your layers, but this is okay. After I do this, what I do is I pick the middle color out of all the colors that I used for the skin, and I bucket in the area where the skin is going to be, and then I make sure to color any white spots on the skin where you're wanting to color it all, so they don't show up. Okay, now what I do after I have bucketed this layer in and colored it, I create a new layer above this layer, and what you're going to want to do is turn the visibility off on the layer that you just bucketed in, and you pick your first highlight color, the darkest highlight color, and you want to go over the areas where it's the lightest and kind of like a bigger region, and you want to just color all that in. And then once you have finished with each layer of highlighting, you take that layer and you turn on the clipping, and it should connect to the area that you just bucketed in. And after you do this, you blend in the area that you just colored of the bigger region. Once you blend it all, it'll kind of go into the skin. And after you do that, you do the same thing with the highlight and the shadow colors, but each layer you kind of just, like, as you get lighter, like, you do smaller areas, and as you get darker, you do smaller areas, and each time you blend it. And the tip I would use is you could turn down the opacity of the blending and turn it up, because you don't want it to be blended the same everywhere through. Some areas you want the lines to be more sharp. But yeah, that's what I do when I color my skin. And the areas where I have lines on the face, I make sure to go in a little darker on those areas. But now that I've explained that, I'm just gonna speed through the process of it. Or I'm not gonna speed through it, I'm gonna show the process of me doing my shadows and everything, but I'm not gonna talk so much right now. Also, remember every time you use a different color on the face that you need to make a new layer for that color, because when you try to blend over, like if you add that color onto something you already blended, it's not going to look as good as if you put it over that layer. Also, I like to do my highlight colors first, but you could also do the darker colors first and then add your highlights afterwards. It's just kind of whatever fits you best. Also, don't forget to clip each of these layers onto the skin, because if you don't clip each of the layers onto the skin, some of it might show in the white part where you blended, and you don't want that. Once again, with my dark shades, I pick the lightest dark color and I kind of go over the biggest region of dark area, and I blend that out, and I want it to kind of, like I said, it's the biggest area of darkness. You don't want to do too little of it because you want more depth and shadow, but then as you go darker, you want to do less of the darkness. And usually when you get to your last, like your darkest color, you don't want to use that in every area where you started with dark, just the areas that are the darkest. Also, don't forget to turn the opacity up and down on your blending, because you don't want everything to blend the same. Like when I blend in the creases of the eyes and in the areas where I put those dark lines to define the face, I don't want to blend as hard right there, because you don't want it to be so soft. You want it to look more in the crease of the eye. You don't want it to just look too subtle. Also, when I was doing this drawing, after I got all my shading in of all the colors that I had previously picked out, I looked at the picture and I realized that some areas were not as defined, and I picked out a color that was slightly darker than the face, and I put it in the area in between the layers where I thought it would suit the best, and I shaded in a little bit more. Once I have completed the skin, all the layers that I have above the skin, I make sure that they are all clipped, and I have them in the order that I would like them. Usually I would have them from darkest to lightest, going from down to up, darkest to lightest. And then after that, I go to the very top of the layers that are all clipped to the skin, and I start moving them all down, because I do not want all those layers anymore. Once I'm done with the skin, I don't need to touch it anymore. And anyways, after you've moved all those layers into the skin, they're all in that one layer, so you don't have like a million layers stocked inside of your layer thing. And also, if you want to, you could always add another layer and clip it if you need to add something else to the skin. But after I do that, I do my eyes usually. You could do the lips next, but what I did is I duplicated my very top layer, my line work layer again, and I moved that under my skin, the duplicate, and I bucketed in the eyes white, and then I picked a light gray color and I did the same thing with the skin. But I didn't really blend on this one because of the eyes. If you do it enough, it kind of looks like it's already blended. So I took that light gray color and I shaded the eyes, and then I picked a darker gray color and I shaded above where I already shaded to give the eye depth. You do not want the eye to look just white because that kind of looks crazy. And then afterwards I picked a pink color to do the inside of the eye, and I colored that in, and then I picked a darker pink color to shade in the pink that I used. Once I have finished coloring the lines completely, I click on the layer that has the skin, which is above the layer that I colored all the eyes with, and I merge that down so I don't have those layers anymore. So my layer with all my color in it is now one layer, so I also don't have so many layers in there. So I can move on to my next piece, because once I'm done with the eyes, I don't need to touch them again, so I merge them into that other layer. But after I do this, I duplicate the line work layer again, same thing I did in the process before. After I duplicate that layer of my line work, I take the duplicate that's underneath the very top line work duplicate, and I move it underneath the skin once again, so whatever you color, if anything goes outside of the lines at all, it doesn't really show because the color of the skin covers it up, so all the details underneath the skin doesn't show. But I basically do the exact same thing with the lips that I did with the skin. I pick out all the colors that I need to use from dark to lightest, and also I try to make them more saturated than what the picture is. I don't use the exact colors, so you need to find the undertone of the lips and move it more over to that color of whatever it is. But yeah, this is what I do with my lips. And then if the mouth is open, I do the same thing with the teeth. I make another layer of my line work. I duplicate my line work there, and then I move it underneath what I've done, and then I shade the teeth. And that's pretty much all I do. like I said, you could go back to the skin if you ever need to, which I did when I was doing this because the lips kind of poke out a little bit. So I went back to the skin and I added darkness, like a shading around the lips, and I didn't really blend it in because I wanted it to be more drastic to show that there was depth with the lips. So you can go back once you merge things down. Just saying, that's what I did in this process. The very last thing I did on the face is I selected my linework layer to do my hair, and I made a layer above my linework layer, which is all black. So I made a layer above my linework layer and I clipped it to my linework layer. And since I don't have any color bucketed in, the only color is that black. So that's the only thing that whatever is clipped to is only gonna go over the black. So everything that you put on is gonna go over the line work. And the brush that I picked out when doing this hair is the fade brush, so it kind of has like a gradient to the lines, and I went over lines to the hair to give a highlight effect. once I finished the hair, I was completely finished with the face, so I merged that into the line work layer, and then I merged the line work layer into everything that I had colored, so the face was all one complete color. And then I turned the visibility off on that layer, and I put a layer underneath it, and the color that I chose, I bucketed in that layer, and then when I turned the visibility back on, that layer was underneath, so I didn't have to color anything. I just bucketed it in without messing up anything. And then to get the glow effect around the face, I selected my layer with the face, and I went to effects and I picked glow, and I chose a lighter color green because I wanted it to match the background. But yeah, guys, I just went into as much depth as I thought I could go into when making this video. This is all the things that I did when I do my cartoon. I thought this one was probably one of the best cartoons I've done yet, and I was asked to do a tutorial, so this is a tutorial that I'm putting out. I hope that whoever watches this, I hope that I helped you. Maybe you just watched this because it was interesting, but if this helped you, that's good. But yeah, if you liked this video and it was useful, give me a like, and if you're new here, be sure to subscribe. I'm going to be posting as often as I can. I post pretty often. I've been posting almost every single day. I've missed like one day in like 2 weeks. So yeah, stay tuned, and I'm gonna be posting more. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment what you think. But yeah, peace.